I chose myself after years of being neglected by my family, so I took full legal control and secretly moved my father to better care without telling them. I'm a 29-year-old woman. I run a small bookkeeping business in a quiet town about 3 hours from where I grew up. I live alone in a rented townhouse with a tiny garden, a coffee machine I love too much, and zero ties to anyone I share blood with, by choice. The night the call came, I was in my kitchen, reheating leftovers. My phone lit up with Harris's name, my older brother. I hadn't heard from him in over a year. Not a birthday, not a text, not even a hope you're well, nothing. I let it ring the first time. It rang again, then a third time. I picked up. He didn't say hello, no warm-up. He just said, "Dad had a stroke. He's in the hospital. You need to come." I didn't answer. I just hung up and stood there, staring at the microwave clock until the numbers blurred. Let me back up. I moved out at 19. There was no dorm, no college fund, no parental support. I worked 2 part-time jobs and took community classes at night. I built everything on my own, rent, bills, groceries, all of it. When I finally started my own bookkeeping business at 24, no one in my family even knew or asked. Harris is 4 years older, married, with 3 kids and a mortgage he can't afford, yet somehow he's still the golden boy. He never left town. He and my parents talk daily. They babysit for him, loan him money, host every birthday, and once even paid off his car insurance after an accident. Then there's Molly, my younger cousin. Her parents split when she was a kid, and somehow she became their bonus daughter. She had a bedroom at their place and a seat at every holiday dinner. They called her their girl in front of me more times than I can count. Meanwhile, I was introduced at weddings or cookouts as our daughter who moved away, always with a tone like I'd abandoned them. When I visited, on my own dime, always uninvited, I was met with lukewarm hugs and casual jabs. I remember asking my mom once why she didn't tell me about a big family reunion they held. She blinked and said, "We assumed you'd be too busy." My father didn't speak much, not to me anyway. He missed my high school graduation. He didn't call when I got promoted. When I sent him a picture of my first office, he replied, "Must be nice." That was it. Still, I kept trying. For years, I called every other week and sent Christmas cards. I drove in for birthdays when I could, but I was always the extra, the outsider. Eventually, I stopped calling. No fight, no drama, just silence. That was over a year before Harris called. After I hung up that night, I didn't cry. I didn't text anyone. I just stood there, letting the microwave beep in the background. I thought about that phrase, "You need to come." Where was that urgency when I was barely getting by at 20, eating ramen and skipping heat to pay rent? Where was that "we all need you" energy when I was sick with the flu and had to take an Uber to the ER because I didn't have family nearby? They never needed me until it was convenient, until I had something they wanted. I didn't go to the hospital. I didn't even ask which one. I turned my phone on silent, watched a movie, and went to bed early. The next morning, I made coffee, fed the neighbor's cat I was pet-sitting, and went to work. That was the moment everything shifted, not because I stopped caring, but because I finally accepted the truth. They had already let go of me years ago, quietly, subtly, with every missed invitation and backhanded comment. So I decided I was going to stop reaching, stop apologizing for not being the version of a daughter they wanted. If they thought I was selfish before, they were about to see what selfish actually looked like, because I wasn't going to be the one who showed up this time. I wasn't going to clean up a mess I didn't make. I wasn't going to sacrifice my peace for people who only remembered me when they were drowning. I didn't tell anyone about the call. Not Liv, not my landlord, not my friend who usually gets the tea first. I kept it to myself, let it simmer. And while they scrambled to figure out hospital forms and insurance claims, while they sat in waiting rooms refreshing their phones, I went about my life. I ordered Thai food. I got a new client referral. I started researching a weekend getaway just for me. I didn't block them. I didn't announce anything. I just chose myself for once and refused to feel guilty for it. They called me selfish for years. They'd whispered it at family dinners, rolled their eyes when I missed gatherings, and told each other stories about how I'd changed. So I figured, fine, let them finally be right. The next morning, my phone started buzzing before sunrise. Missed calls, texts, even voice notes from numbers I didn't recognize at first. Relatives I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly flooding me with messages. Most started the same way, "He's your father." Then came the guilt. "Don't let the past get in the way. Family pulls together when it counts. You'll regret it if you don't come." I read a few, then swiped them all away. I showered, got dressed, and headed to my office. I had 2 client meetings and a tax prep session scheduled that day. I kept every one of them. During lunch, I checked my voicemail. Harris had called again. His voice sounded stiff and clipped. You're the only one who doesn't have a family to take care of. You have time. I stared at the wall for a while after that one. Then I typed out a message and sent it back to him. You're right. I do have time, but I choose how I use it. That was the spark. 10 minutes later, the old family group chat, which had been dead since someone's baby shower 3 years ago, lit up like a bonfire. Messages started pouring in. Harris again, Molly, even one of my mom's church friends. You don't mean that. You're being cruel. He might not make it through the week. This is your chance to make it right. I muted the thread. Later that night, I scrolled through Molly's private family group post that someone forwarded to me. She'd posted 3 photos from the hospital. Dad in a wheelchair, an IV drip in the background, a cup of juice in his lap. Harris was standing beside him, holding a newspaper. Molly was smiling next to the bed like it was a baby shower. Her caption read, "We're all here for you, Uncle. You're not alone." I wasn't even told which hospital he was in. Not one person gave me an address, a floor, or a contact number. They just assumed I'd show up like a dog hearing the dinner bell. Liv, my closest friend, came by that evening with soup and groceries. She offered to drive me if I changed my mind. I told her I wasn't going, not now. The next morning, I booked a 2-night stay at a spa an hour away. I drove out Friday after work with my phone on silent. The room had a view of pine trees and a rainfall shower. I got a facial, a massage, and ordered room service. I didn't tell a soul where I went. By Sunday night, I was back in my own bed, rested, unbothered. Monday morning, I checked my inbox. 3 new voicemails from Harris, 1 from my mother, a dozen angry texts from Molly. There was a screenshot of a message from someone claiming my absence had embarrassed the family when hospital staff asked about next of kin, and I wasn't listed or present. I responded only once. I texted Harris, "You all made your choice a long time ago. Now I'm making mine." He replied 20 minutes later, "You'll regret this when he's gone." I didn't answer. I made dinner, something simple, roasted chicken, rice, steamed broccoli. I watched an old crime documentary I'd seen before and folded my laundry. Then I turned off my phone, set my alarm, and went to sleep early. I slept harder than I had in months. No guilt, no second guessing. That week, the calls slowed down. No one else messaged me directly. But Liv said she saw Molly post a passive-aggressive quote on her Instagram story, "You don't lose people. They choose to walk away." I didn't reply. I didn't even open the app. On Wednesday, a former neighbor from my hometown texted me a photo of a hospital bulletin board. It was a volunteer schedule. Molly and Harris's names were both listed under visitation support. My name wasn't anywhere on it. They were making it look like a family was rallying, everyone except me. By Friday, I was back to my normal routine. I wrapped up 3 client files, signed on a new business, and picked up my dry cleaning. I walked past a florist on the way home. I paused, looked at the arrangement in the window, yellow tulips, and kept walking. I had no intention of going to the hospital, not until I had a reason, not just because they called. They'd spent years building a family without me. Now they could manage it without me too. By the end of that week, the messages had mostly stopped. No more guilt texts, no more passive-aggressive quotes, just silence. Then I got coffee with an old college friend who still lived in my hometown. She mentioned, offhand like it was nothing, that my dad had been moved to long-term care. The hospital had apparently released him 3 days earlier. No one told me, not Harris, not my mother, not even Molly, who couldn't stop posting filtered hospital photos a week earlier. I went home and searched every care facility in the county until I found a recent check-in notice for a patient under my dad's name. The facility was small, just 20 rooms. I checked their website, outdated. The reviews were worse. Most mentioned overworked staff, missed medication doses, long call bell waits, and basic neglect. One even mentioned a patient falling during a transfer. I called the main desk the next morning, just asked if they needed any documents from family. The woman on the phone paused before saying, "Everything's being handled by immediate family." I didn't argue. I thanked her and hung up. Then I opened a new browser tab and searched again. This time, I looked up Harris's work number. I called using a burner VoIP number and altered my voice slightly, enough to sound like a receptionist. I told him I was confirming insurance details on behalf of his father's provider. He didn't hesitate, rattling off the name, insurance ID, and policy group like it was nothing. I hung up and used that info to call the insurance company myself. The representative pulled up the file and explained that my father qualified for extended care at a better-rated facility, but the family had opted for basic coverage to avoid additional copays. I confirmed a few more details before ending the call. They'd chosen the cheapest option and locked him into a subpar place, then turned around and called me heartless. I didn't scream. I didn't text anyone. I opened my file drawer and pulled out the contact card of a lawyer friend from a networking group. Within 2 days, she'd emailed me a scanned copy of the old family will. My name was listed clearly: executor of the estate, medical proxy if required, power of attorney pending incapacity, signed 6 years ago. No one had updated it since. The following Friday, I drove to the care facility just after lunch. I didn't announce myself. I walked up to the front desk, gave my name, and asked to speak with the administrator. The administrator was polite but confused at first. I pulled out a printed copy of the legal paperwork and a notarized ID. Then I handed over a written request to be copied on all care decisions, billing, and status reports. He nodded and typed me into the system. By the time I left, I had a visitor's badge, a full copy of my dad's chart, and a schedule of weekly updates the staff would now send directly to me. I didn't message the family. That weekend, I received the first batch of reports. His mobility was limited, speech impaired, no physical therapy sessions scheduled due to budget limits. Meals were a soft diet. No fruit allowed unless provided by family. I forwarded the report to my lawyer and had her flag the neglect. The next Thursday, Harris sent a message. "Why are we not getting updates anymore?" I replied, "Because I am the point of contact now. You wanted me involved. I am." He didn't reply. Later that afternoon, I scheduled a tour at a private care home 2 towns over. I called their intake office, asked about room availability, insurance compatibility, and weekend visitation rules. They had 1 opening left. The next morning, I dropped by in person. The place looked like a modern hotel, clean hallways, natural light. The residents looked alert. Staff members were smiling. I asked for a quote, got a printed brochure, and left with everything I needed. I didn't mention it to anyone. That night, I sat at my dining table with the brochure, my dad's chart, and my laptop. I compared plans, insurance coverage, and caregiver-to-patient ratios. Then I emailed the insurance company, attached the new care facility's paperwork, and requested verification of coverage under my father's current plan. The response came in under 24 hours, covered, with approval from the listed medical representative, me. I signed the transfer authorization the next day and faxed it to both facilities. The transfer date was set for Thursday at 9 a.m. I didn't tell a soul. Let them find out the same way I found out he'd been moved in the first place, by accident. It was time they learned what it really looked like when I got involved. The private facility I had toured earlier that week was calm, bright, and well-organized. Not a single patient in the hallways looked neglected. The staff didn't know who I was or who my father was, and I didn't give them a backstory. I just asked what mattered: nurse-to-patient ratio, visitation policies, meal rotations, therapy schedules. I requested a detailed quote for full-time care and forwarded it to the insurance company with my father's policy ID. I received confirmation the next morning he was eligible, no restrictions. They just needed the go-ahead from the legal rep. That was me. By lunchtime, I'd signed the papers and scheduled the transfer for Thursday at 9 a.m. I didn't call Harris. I didn't update Molly. I didn't text my mother. Not one word. The new facility arranged transport and sent me a checklist of what to bring. I prepared everything myself: his ID, basic clothes, medications, insurance documents, and personal files. I printed out the legal forms and packed them in a folder under my arm, at exactly 8:45 a.m. On Thursday, I pulled into the parking lot of the old care facility. The same woman from the front desk recognized me but didn't stop me. I gave my name, confirmed the transfer, and walked straight to his room. My father was sitting up in bed, staring blankly at the muted TV. When he saw me, his eyes followed me slowly across the room. He didn't speak, but his mouth twitched like he wanted to. I didn't ask questions. "You're going to be taken care of now," I told him. 2 transport workers arrived, lifted him gently into a wheelchair, and loaded him into the van. I handed over the signed discharge papers, took a copy of the nurse's report, and left. The new facility was waiting with fresh linens, new clothes, and a welcome packet. His room had a large window with sunlight spilling over a reading chair and a clean nightstand. The lunch menu was handwritten and included options. That evening, the head nurse from the old facility called Harris and informed him that someone had arranged a discharge. Harris called my work line 10 minutes later. I watched the phone ring and let it stop on its own. An hour later, he left a message at the new facility's front desk, asking who had authorized the move. The receptionist politely told him to direct all questions to the legal medical representative. She gave him my name. The next morning, my mother called the front desk asking why she wasn't told about the transfer. The receptionist told me about the call. I gave one instruction: note in her file that she is not authorized for care decisions. That afternoon, I received an email from the insurance company. It confirmed I was now the sole contact for all decisions, billing, and treatment plans. No one else would be copied. Over the next few days, I visited my father every other day. The nurses reported that he seemed calmer and started sleeping through the night. I brought him crossword books, even though I knew he wouldn't use them. He looked at the pages anyway. That Saturday, Molly showed up at the new facility unannounced. The receptionist asked her to wait while they checked the list. When she was told she needed written approval from the legal rep to visit, she left without signing in. No calls followed, no messages. The silence was starting to become familiar, and for once, it worked in my favor. For about 2 weeks, everything was quiet. No texts, no voicemails, no pop-ins. It was like the rest of the family had hit pause to figure out their next move. Then Harris showed up at the new facility without warning. He went straight to the front desk and asked for my father's medical records. When the staff told him he wasn't listed on the authorization list, he raised his voice and demanded to speak to someone in charge. The nurses didn't argue. They contacted me immediately, just as I had instructed. He was told he had no legal access and would need written permission from the medical proxy. He left without signing the visitor log. That evening, my office landline rang. Harris hadn't called that number in years. My assistant picked up. When he asked for me, she told him I was in meetings all day. He didn't call again. The next morning, I drove to the facility and asked to meet with the manager. I brought an updated list of approved visitors, just me and a caregiver I had hired part-time for weekends. No family. I signed a formal restriction order. No one else could visit without written permission submitted 72 hours in advance. No exceptions. All staff were briefed the same day. Later, one of the nurses quietly told me that Harris had said I was using Dad to feel powerful. I thanked her and changed the subject. That wasn't worth responding to. I decided to go through the box of my father's belongings from the old care home. Most of it was junk, torn slippers, mismatched socks, faded sweatshirts. But at the bottom of the box, under a crumpled church bulletin, I found a plain envelope. My name was written on the front in black letters. The paper had yellowed at the edges. I opened it in my car. It was a letter from my father, dated the year I moved out. 2 pages. No fluff, no I love you, just statements. He admitted he hadn't been good at showing up, said he didn't know how to parent someone who didn't need him, and said he didn't stop me from leaving because he thought he'd already lost me. I folded the letter and slid it into my glove compartment. I didn't tell anyone it existed. That weekend, my uncle called my office number. I let it go to voicemail. He left a long message about how I was tearing the family apart. I texted him back. The family tore itself apart a long time ago. I'm just the one who noticed. Bills from the facility started rolling in. I reviewed every line and paid what was necessary. I told the billing department in writing that no one else was authorized to manage or submit claims. They asked if I wanted to update the emergency contact. I gave them one name, mine, nobody else. A month after the transfer, one of the nurses mentioned my father was showing minor improvements. He'd started tracking the TV screen with his eyes and could lift a cup of water on his own. It wasn't dramatic, but it was something. I approved an increased physiotherapy schedule, twice a week instead of once. It wasn't cheap, but I didn't ask anyone else to pitch in. I authorized the payments and signed off on the new plan. That same week, Harris sent a handwritten letter through the facility. He accused me of using our father as a pawn, said I was cutting everyone out on purpose, and called what I was doing spiteful. I skimmed the first paragraph, folded it shut, and dropped it in the drawer the staff kept for visitor messages. It's still sitting there. A few days later, the front desk flagged a suspicious visitor entry. Someone tried to schedule a visit using a different last name and email address, claiming to be a new friend. When the staff ran the ID, it didn't match. It was Molly. I reviewed all access rules and had the facility update them. No visitors allowed without government-issued photo ID matching legal names already approved on file. The front desk posted the new sign that day. One of the younger nurses pulled me aside the next time I visited. She told me she'd never seen a daughter handle everything alone the way I was. I nodded and changed the topic. I wasn't there for praise. In his room, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. On the nightstand next to the water pitcher was a small framed photo of me from high school, taken the week I left for college. My father had apparently asked for it when he saw it in his belongings. I hadn't known he kept that photo at all. The next day, I got a call from the insurance coordinator. They asked if I wanted to add a backup contact in case of emergencies. I said no, everything should still come to me directly. That Friday afternoon, I saw a familiar car parked outside my office, my mother's. She didn't come inside, she just sat in the driver's seat for a while, looking at the front entrance. I watched from the window of the break room. She left after 15 minutes. No call, no message. The following week, I hired a part-time weekend caregiver. It gave me some breathing room. I started using one weekend a month to take short drives or unplug at home. I didn't ask for input. I didn't tell anyone outside of the facility. It was in my budget, and it made sense. At night, I started keeping a journal, not for venting, just facts, dates, receipts, care summaries, medication notes, voicemail timestamps. I labeled each entry by visit. Every interaction was logged. If anything came up legally, I'd be ready. When the facility emailed the quarterly care report, I skimmed the charts and dosage notes. At the bottom, in different handwriting, someone had added a line in pen. "He seems calmer these days. Whatever you're doing, it's working." I didn't reply. I just filed it away with everything else. 4 months had passed since I took over everything. The silence from the rest of the family wasn't loud anymore. It had just become normal. No calls, no drama, no sudden appearances. The care facility was now a routine part of my week. I visited every Tuesday and Saturday. Staff gave me printed summaries, small updates, blood pressure stable, appetite improving, mild speech progress. My father could now speak a few words. Most were unclear, but sometimes he got names out. Once, while I was adjusting his blanket, he looked right at me and said my name slowly, clearly, just once. I nodded and went back to adjusting the blanket. Later that month, the facility administrator called me in. They had finally finished sorting old intake files. In one of them was a signed and notarized document. My father had listed me as his sole medical proxy and primary beneficiary, dated years ago. I hadn't known. No one had told me the signatures were official. The paper had been buried in an old folder. After I signed the current confirmation paperwork, I drove to my lawyer's office. I had them update every legal document, financial control, medical directives, estate plans. Everything was now under my name alone, locked down. The modest pension my father received was untouched. I had been covering expenses from my own account. Harris and Molly had not contributed a single dollar. Meanwhile, both of them began sending emails to the facility, requests for itemized bills, visitation schedules, even caregiver notes. The front desk forwarded everything to me. Each time I replied with the same line, "Please contact the legal representative." They stopped writing after that. A week later, a letter arrived at my office in a plain envelope. It was from my mother. One sentence: "He's still your father. You'll never understand what it means to be loyal." I didn't respond. I walked into the billing office the next day and paid the next 6 months of room fees in full, receipt in hand. I signed a note instructing staff not to allow any adjustments, reimbursements, or outside inquiries. No mistakes, no interference. The next weekend, the weather turned warm. I brought a foldable chair and sat outside with my father under a shaded tree. We didn't speak. He looked out over the garden. I stayed beside him for nearly an hour. When I stood up to leave, he grabbed my hand stronger than I expected. He didn't say anything, just looked at me. I held his gaze, then leaned down slightly. "You're not my responsibility," I said, "but I chose to be here." Then I let go and walked back to my car.